going down. It's all what? It must be 6 p.m. It must be 6 p.m. Oh my God, where my girls at? We are here. We are all four here. This is exciting. This is so great. We got everybody here today because we got issues. It must be 6 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, because it is a time when we get together and we get to talk. Welcome to 910 AM, the Superstation. I'm your host today, Gloria Mayfield Banks, and I'm so excited to be here from sunny. It's hot, but it's not as hot as it is in a lot of other places. It's hot, but it's not as hot as it is in other places. Somebody asked me today, said, how you doing? I said, I'm standing in the air condition. I'm doing just fine. There's a lot of people that are not in air condition today, and it's hot for a lot of different reasons. But I'm so glad to be here with my girlfriends. I'm so glad to talk about this topic. Women up, woman up, women up, woman up. You made a mistake? How do you take it back? How do you apologize? How do you go forward? How do you sustain the relationship? How do you keep things going? Well, we've been friends for over 30 years, and trust and believe we've met that issue several times over and over again with ourselves and with other people. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, what brings out where we are all gifted in doing something of that. Because, you know, keeping a relationship, mending a relationship, you know, that's how we started this show, was to talk about the girlfriends. So I want to bring in the girlfriends, and I'm going to go to Sabrina first because she was on the screen with me first today. And then, okay, so we're going to go back to Caterina, and then we're going to go to Chris. We're going to say hi to everybody. So Sabrina, what's happening out there in Ohio?
Oh, Gloria, it's just a beautiful day in the neighborhood, just counting blessings. It is so hot. I think it's almost 94 degrees way out here by the lake. 94 by the lake is really something.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's all good, you know, it's all good. But I will tell you, it's sweltering in some of the parts of the country. And so I'm glad to be here. It's good to see Caterina, Crisette, Gloria, all four. We get an A+ for attendance. Good job, good job, good job. We know that's hard to do and hot fun in the summertime. So I haven't had even I think Michael is clapping for us. I haven't seen an ounce of news today. I've been out and about, crazy busy today. So I don't know so I tuned into the show to find out what's going on in the world.
Well, we can bring you some news. But that's pretty amazing. 94 degrees in Ohio is a very big deal.
Yeah.
By the lake, and she said it's 99 degrees. Kay said 99 degrees in Dayton. So is Ohio getting temperatures at 100 degrees? Because if that's the case, Ohio at 100, that's crazy.
Yeah.
My first cousin lives in Los Angeles, and her son is a track star at his college, and he is running at midnight so that he can run. He can't run any other time. He has to in the middle of the night, go to bed, get up, run in the middle of the night. He's on the track team at his college and run in the middle of the night because it's too hot out there. It's amazing what's going on. And so if anybody got word from Biden today, I didn't get to see it, but I know he was talking about climate control. So Caterina, what's happening? What's happening out there, Caterina?
Kind of way I'm muted. Okay. I will tell you that today I have no news because I'm saving all my news for tomorrow. When I tell you, I'm like, clear your calendar. You know what? I have missed all the January 6th hearings. I've either been traveling or something. So I've had to catch like the highlights, which I know I'm missing the juice. It's just not the same when you don't see it. It's like watching the OJ trial. You just wanted to watch it, you know? So I hope that I can clear my calendar and know that I can watch tomorrow. So tomorrow's going to be the news. Today we're serving. It is hot here too. Just that's the story for everybody. I've been talking to people in Dallas. 105. Oh my gosh.
105.
105 humidity. 105 in the shade. Gloria, get ready. Okay, 105 in the shade. Chris, I hope you got something extra for your edges. Everybody needs edge control. We all need edge control. So. Okay. Oh my goodness. But today we are serving, you know, my husband always says and repeats the scripture about pure religion is to widows and orphans. And there are so many people that stand in need, but we know women that have that widows and widowers and orphans. Today we're doing something special in our ministry for widows. And these are friends of my husband that have, you know, gone home to be with the Lord, and we have been very close to the couples, and so we're serving them. And just to remind people that it's all, it's hard. And if you add on top of that the loss of a spouse, your soulmate for 20 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, in some cases, 60 years in other cases. That's one of the things I respect so much about my husband, is he's a really good friend, and he really loves on seniors and widows and so forth. So that's what we've been. What's
been some of the most revealing part of that? Because we need to do a show about widows. We haven't talked about that topic. I can't believe after a year and a half we haven't touched that subject. But what are some of the revealing things that you've gained from that?
Well, this is Lady Crisette's category. Really, Chris, we should do a show on this, especially in the church.
Sure.
When you were the pastor's wife, sometimes you get kicked to the curb. I mean, it's just, call it what you call it. When you have been at a particular position, and if you didn't have your stuff in order, if you were living in the church's property or whatever, I mean, actually a lot of women, they have to go back and get a job. They have to do other things, because if they've worked in ministry alongside their husband for all of these years. And so I know it's challenging for everyone, but in this particular case, these are women that have been married to pastors. And that's one of the things, is I could say, you know what, make sure, God bless the woman who has her own, right? I've heard you talk about that, Chris. That's so we should really do a show about that. Really, in the church, married to a pastor, and then what happened? He left you and went to God, or he left you and went someplace else. And you got to have your.
And to add to that, Caterina, you're absolutely right. And maybe that'll be a show that we have in August. I'll never forget, and this is pre-COVID, so maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, when we were doing our pastors and church leaders conference, and it was during our luncheon, and it was a bunch of first ladies. We were all sitting at the table, and there was another first lady who had recently lost her husband, maybe of 2 years. And when I tell you, she said at that table, she schooled every single one of us that was at that table. And I will never forget what she said. She said, when your husband passed, you better make sure that you don't cry twice. And I was like, okay. And she was just talking about so many times pastors, and everybody think they're going to live longer sometimes than they actually do. Sometimes the insurance is wrapped up in the church. Sometimes everything is in the church. And so when he passes, the insurance money sometimes, doesn't go to the first family or to the widow, because it's one of those things you think you're going to change it. You got enough time. And I promise you could have heard a pin drop with the way that everybody was leaning to her. And she told them, she said, I'm telling you, when you leave here today, you need to go and you need to ask your husband this. You need to see the documents. You need to know what they are. And you need to make sure they're in your name and not in the church's name. When I tell you, we don't know what the main speaker was talking about, because we were all tuned into what she was saying. And I'll say this, I know of several cases where it was really a sad situation, where the pastor's wife, and many pastors' wife become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And it's really sad that when he passes on, because things were not put in order, that, sometimes they really do have to go to get a job. And to think of all the sacrifices that they have made throughout their life, where they could have gotten a job, but they decided to support their husband, maybe be a stay-at-home wife, or, work at the church for free, because not all first ladies are being paid. And then when he passes, sometimes she is totally just left on her own. And that's not hearsay. That's what I know. So that would be a very, very great topic to discuss.
That would be a great topic to discuss, because I'm leaning in right here. I'm leaning in, and I'm not in any of those categories, but I'm leaning in because it stretches. It stretches over. You talk about women women up. You know, you talk about what we know. We've done shows on the wheels. We've done shows on preparing yourself. We've done shows on it. But then into certain categories, it really does make a difference. It really does make a difference. Chris, do you have an update on the Sesame Street?
No, but you know what I did see, and I thought I posted it on TMZ, because I'm telling you, if you want to get all the tea, you have to watch TMZ. Okay, they showed another clip of, and I don't know if it was the same parade, but it was another Sesame Street character that went over to this little girl, and this little girl looked to be maybe 2 years old, because it didn't look like, you know, she could barely walk. He went over to her and kept, you know, going in front of her till he knocked her down. And she fell down. And I'm like, that wasn't, I mean, it was blatant. And the little girl fell down. So, you know, that's just 2 clips that we have seen. I don't know what all the fallout is going to be from that, but I really think that Sesame Street, the organization, the corporation, they need to come out, and they, at this point, they got to make a bigger statement than what they've already made, because let Black people boycott, you know, Cookie Monster and Big Bird and all of that, especially, you know, we're going to be coming up against the holidays real soon. So they better get out in front of that.
Right. I saw some of that, and I heard on the news some of it, and I heard a lot about them making the organization come out and make some statements about it. But you know what? I want to know who's underneath those costumes. Have they come out? I want to know who's underneath the costumes, because they have to know who's underneath the costumes.
It's a hood, okay? They in the hood.
You know? I want to know.
Yeah.
Right, under the hood. Right, exactly.
I don't know if you saw the second thing that I text you guys, but it reminded us that Sesame Street was started specifically, the origin was for Black kids. And it reminded us about the origin of Sesame Street. I had forgotten. I think I knew the story, but I forgot. And so if you go back to the original origin on this last Instagram, if you go to Fro Babies on Instagram, they posted, but they went back and talked about, do you see it, Sabrina? What I just said, that it was started in, I don't know if it was New York, someplace in the on the East Coast, and it was started for specifically for African-American kids. And so it's just very interesting to see the, you know, the whole thing fall out. But yeah, I saw that clip, Chris, and another one of them walking past. So yeah.
So there's 3 clips?
I've seen a couple.
They're everywhere.
And you walk right. They're everywhere.
Really?
Attorney Crump is even in on it. I mean,
no way.
Yeah.
Class.
It's not funny, but it's like out there. You know, when Crump is on it, it's an issue for sure.
Now, I'm telling you something. He has made a name for himself, because it used to be somebody else when they were out there, when it was Al Sharpton.
That's right.
Now it's Crump. And when Crump is out there, it's something to be said about it. Something, it's hot out there. Hot. So that's interesting. You guys, just go back to this just for a second and talk about how hot it is out there in the United States and around the world. It's become a really big problem. It's a really big conversation that the all the people around the world are talking about. All the leaders of the countries are talking about. And they said in London, the extreme heat and the number of people that are dying, that dozens of China states are on huge alerts. It's a big deal. The high temperatures are running through the United States, and it's not going down. It's going to keep going up. They're talking about how Texas prisoners have no air conditioning.
Wow.
You guys, the prisoners in Texas, there's 14 prisons that have no air conditioning, and 55 only have partial working air conditioning. So there's a lot of issues out there. Here we go. Going to a break. We're coming back, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things. So we hope you're with us. We're glad you're here with us. We got issues at 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, and we're going to be right back at you. Yes. Here we go. Here we go. We're going to step into this topic. We're going to step into the topic of talking to people and giving them some support when there's a difficult conversation. How do you woman up? How do you say, I made a mistake? How do you say, I need to come back from the mistake? How do you save yourself? How do you not get frustrated? How do you have that conversation? This is so interesting. I've had a lot of conversations lately with women who are really super frustrated, or they're super overwhelmed, or someone has hurt their feelings and they don't know how to handle it. I find that they don't know how to handle that conversation when there's a difficult conversation, but it's something that that definitely has to happen, because I'm really passionate about it right now with the feeling in the country. You know, like Caterina says, I'm all over the January 6th. Like, I can't wait for it to come tomorrow. Like, I watch it like it is a soap opera, and I haven't watched soap opera since high school, for real, but I'm all over it. But to me, it is an example of how challenging it is for people to deal in disagreements. It is the height of disagreement. They don't know how to navigate. And so all this other stuff. Now, I think that's like at an extreme level, but I'm watching it. I'm even watching how the people on the same board, you know, the insurrection board, how they're dealing with each other, because, you know, the conversations that they must have to say in terms of how they're going to position it, what's going to be said, what's going to be the anchor, who's going to talk first, who's going to have more time. I mean, all of that becomes a part of the conversation that people agree or disagree with. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to give some conversation about how do you deal with it, because sometimes you're giving instructions to people that are your friends, and sometimes you're giving conversation to people that are just watching you, or that you don't even know, but they know that you're a problem solver. And so you're better at mending people's feelings. You're better at mending people's conversations. So one thing that they talked about is acknowledge your errors. I'm going to tell you something that I've said, and I want to go around to the girlfriends and find out what they say. One of the things that I have said forever and ever and ever is, if you don't believe that the person stayed up all night the night before and wake up in the morning to intentionally hurt you, if they hurt you, it's probably a mistake. So it's either malice or it's a mistake. If they stayed up all night thinking about how they're going to hurt you, then you need to run and you need to get away from that person. That ain't no fixing that. But if you really believe they hurt you, but they didn't intend to hurt you, is it smart for you to run away, or is it smart for you to confront the person? And today I used that word, confront the person, but I know it sounded negative. So I said, I'm saying the word confront, but I don't mean for you to confront in a negative way. I just mean for you to hit it head on, because you can't run from everybody who disappoints you. If you run from everybody who disappoints you, you'll be running all your life. So I want love for someone else to think. That's my motto. If it wasn't malice, it was a mistake. Anybody else have a motto that they go by when they're dealing with people who someone hurt you?
You know what, Gloria? One of the things that I constantly remind myself, and there's a scripture in the Bible that says, perfect love casts out fear. And sometimes when you have to confront someone, if you're not that type of person, some people don't have a problem in confronting issues. There are other people, for a variety of reasons, that don't like any kind of confrontation, even if they're the person that's being hurt in the situation. They still just find it very difficult to confront. And sometimes there is fear based in that. So sometimes it's a matter of figuring out, why are you fearful to confront that person? And I'm not saying, as you explained earlier, it's not you don't want to confront someone and it's a very volatile or dangerous situation, but it could be a girlfriend that you need to have a conversation with. And sometimes it just really starts with you having the courage to know how to do it. And sometimes you may not have the words. And I know for sure, that was an area at a point in my life that I was challenged with. And, we all have a girlfriend, Nora. I mean, she was very good at, speaking truth to power. She didn't have a problem with it. And sometimes, like, can you call this person for me? And this is what I need you to tell them. And after a while, she's like, no, how about you call that person and you tell them? So really having the right words to say, one of the things I've learned to say is hear my heart. You know that I love you and I would never say anything or do anything to hurt you intentionally. So, but it's important that I share this with you. So I think you can disarm people with the tone of your voice, how you speak, how you lean in. So all of those are lessons and things that I've learned along the way of communicating when it's challenging.
I love what you. Go ahead, Caterina.
I was just going to say, I don't like it. It doesn't come easy for me. Maybe it's the only child syndrome and I just always got my way. So wasn't anybody else to have confrontation with, because, your parents, it ain't, there's no such thing as confrontation with them. You always lose. So maybe that was it. But I have learned through maturity that I'm speaking to people who don't like doing it, and maybe, it's easier for them just to run from it. I've learned that running from it, the price of running from it is way higher than the price of just going to the person. If the person is valuable to you, you can't walk over it. It doesn't please God. It doesn't honor you. It doesn't honor the relationship. It leads to more and more stuff. And then with that, just with what I've learned, when you feel emotion, that negotiation podcast that I was listening to, when you label it, it decreases the power. So communication is important. And the last thing, we've talked about it on the show before, is I've learned, do not do it over text or email. You have to see the person. It's the hardest thing, is to pick up the phone, or, you might text and say, can I have a moment of your time? I need a little bit of your time or something. But if someone's trying to come for you digitally, you can't. You got to risk the urge to text back them emojis, them angry faces, and whatever you might want to say, because it never comes out well. It never ends well.
Right. That's huge. Oh my gosh. The text, the way that we've used text or other messaging systems to avoid the issue is been a real problem. I mean, so much so I learned yesterday, I was talking to somebody, they're like, I can tell by the way the text message that they read it, but they didn't respond, or they listened, but they didn't say it. I mean, we're down into the weeds when it comes to trying to deal with people. Right. And that's really a challenge, but trying to deal with it, confrontation on text, or just, it doesn't have to be confrontation. Let me just say this, what you said, just address the situation. You can't address the situation on text messaging. I mean, it turns out to be more than you ever thought, and you leave out so much, and you don't feel the heart. One of the things that you said, Chris, was you said, the way in which you disarm the person. If you're going to bring something to the person, how are you going to disarm the person? Sometime in the voice. And Sabrina, you're very good at hitting stuff dead on. So what would you say in terms of advice, in terms of that, when you want to disarm a person or make them feel comfortable before you start having the conversation?
Yeah, I tone is really big. I think the tone, you already know when somebody's coming at you. If they don't have great people skills, you can feel it, their energy. If you're in person, the way they look, the way their arms are folded, body language is everything. Over the phone, you already know that they're not relaxed. And so I just always think you need to breathe before you speak before you think before you speak. And whatever comes out of your mouth, you can't bring it back. So it's very important to pause for the cause. It's also very important to separate fact from feelings.
Yes.
It's really important to separate, because we're all up in our head, and it's not based on what? A feeling, an emotion, something that's not real. And so through my years of working with people, I've always, if I get a phone call or I get a text, I really want to study the words, study the thought before I address it. And sometimes, I mean, many times it's like, not today, Sabrina, you're too emotional. You got to cool off, because you're going to come off as upset, and whatever comes out of your mouth is not going to be right. So just sleep on it, pray on it, and deal with that tomorrow. And I think many times we just need to take some time before we jump into it. because our emotions are raw. So
okay, so let me ask you guys a question. About it. Leading up to that, if someone texts you and you know they're mad at you, do you think it's smart to not respond because you know your response will be bad, or it's important to respond right away? What do you guys think?
I tend to want to jump in because it's that important to me and I want to address it. But years of life have taught me to let it simmer a bit. I don't need to jump right in. So I think it depends on the severity of the situation and if it needs my immediate attention and or response. So I think it's a case-by-case situation. I don't think it's one size fits all.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. You know, it's so funny. I was talking to somebody. I said, you know what? When someone texts you and you're too mad to respond, the nice thing to do is to let them know you saw it. You may not be able to respond to the conversation, but you can say, I'm going to get back to you in a little while. We're getting ready to go to break because we're on this topic that the girlfriends are experts at. This one for sure, you're getting some expertise. But you know what? I know our people that are listening to We Got Issues have these circumstances. So we invite you to call in and tell us a little bit about some circumstances that you've had like that at 313-778-7600. This is 910 AM, the Superstation. And we're talking about We Got Issues. And we'll be right back. Life is what you make it, what you make it, what you make it. Life is what you make it, what you make it, what you make it. Life is what you make it. I think that our favorite song is that song. That's what I think. Our favorite song is our song. That's what I think. Because every time that thing comes on, it's something. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about this one. Let's talk about taking responsibility. A big part of making mistakes is taking responsibilities. I want to ask us all to go back to a time when we've made a mistake and we have to take responsibility for it. So, how have you handled it in the past? So I'm going to go first. How have I taken the responsibility? For instance, there's been times when I've made a bad decision. I've hurt someone's feelings, and not meaning to hurt their feelings, and it's nothing I could do. It was irreversible. The mistake that I made is irreversible. So my strategy is to take in my head, I feel my responsibility is to take the burden. If I just take the burden, then they don't have the burden and they don't have to carry the emotions. You're absolutely right. That's where I made an error. I cannot fix it. So how would you like to go forward? What would you like to see happen, given the fact that I created an error that has affected you? And even when I'm saying it now, I can see how my voice goes much slower. It's much more deliberate. It goes down deeper. But I've always felt like, I need to take the responsibility. So if you guys talk about either yourself or someone that who's really good at that, taking the responsibility, how do you absorb the responsibility of an action? Because if you acknowledge your errors, it makes people trust you more. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It just does. And for me also, that's a maturity level, because it didn't come easily, but you just have to apologize. I made a mistake that is going to cost somebody money. I will say that when it's money, I tend to take the brunt of it, and other businesses and other people don't always take that on. They will just say sorry, and I'm like, but you just need some money, okay? So yeah, I try to go overboard, but I know one thing that happens for me when I do apologize is, I go to sleep thinking about it. I beat myself up. I know that. Just all day. Why did I do that? Why did you do that? It just goes over and over. So then I have to circle back and forgive myself. Because right. I'm like, you are obsessing over your stupid mistake. I'm like, you know better. Why did you do that? But we move so fast, and it's just, so I can be really hard on myself when I hurt somebody else's feelings or make a mistake that puts them at a disadvantage.
Right. But what you said was really big. It's even in one of these articles is, how do you forgive yourself? How do you let yourself go? How do you move on quickly when you honestly believe that you didn't do it intentionally? You didn't do it intentionally, but you just feel so bad about it. It's just like you got to forgive yourself for it. But anybody else, you got some thoughts on taking responsibility? Either you've done it or you've seen somebody else do it.
Yeah, I just think you got to own it. You have to own it. When you're wrong. When things didn't go quite like you thought they were. And also, and this was really hard for me earlier in life. I would give half-hearted apologies. Like, if you feel that way, I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, that's real half-hearted.
Yeah. And it made me feel some kind of way, because when other people would do it to me, it made me feel some kind of way. And so I said, well, Sabrina, that's exactly how you apologize. That is your language. And so now I just make sure, to the best of my ability, that if I owe someone an apology, I own it. I own my stuff. I say I was wrong and I want to get better. I just think it's important for you to own your stuff and say, how do we move forward? But let's be honest, it's not easy for us as human beings to own it, embrace it, accept it, and share it. That's just not who we be. So I think we all can work in that area. We really can. So Gloria, you're pretty good at it, Gloria. You're pretty good at it.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things, what I was going to say is, there have been times where you know that you responded the wrong way, and not everything is an issue of you were wrong and other person was right. Sometimes it's an issue of you should have responded differently. And I just think everybody has that compass. Well, many people have that compass in that where you, like Caterina, you're thinking about it, you can't sleep, you got that funny feeling in your gut, and you need to pick up the phone and apologize. And I have found, that, it sometimes it has taken me a while, because in your mind you're trying to justify. Come on, we've all been there. You're trying to justify why you were right and they were wrong, but it's something that's just nagging at you, saying, be the bigger person, pick up the phone. So what I've learned to do is, when I feel like that, to do it immediately. Call the number immediately. Now, I'm not going to say sometimes like, please let the voicemail come on so I can hang up. Right. But I have learned to just hurry up and call and get the words out of your mouth. And once you do that, it is such a relief. I'm telling you. I mean, sometimes you spend all the time dreading the phone call, but once you make the phone call, once you apologize, and again, like you said, Sabrina, not getting into the weeds of, well, that wasn't my intent. Sometimes we can make things worse by saying, well, I didn't, I'm so sorry you took it that way. That's not what I meant. As opposed to, if they were offended, acknowledge it. You know what? That wasn't my intention. You were offended, and I apologize. And I hope that you will take my apology. And I think body language, if you're with them, the tone of your voice is so important. But for me, it is, when you know you should do it, just pick up the phone and go for it. Don't overthink it, because I think it becomes harder when you let time go past.
What about if they don't accept your apology?
That was my exact
There's
question.
nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can do.
How do you either respond, or how do you protect yourself? Because one thing it says in here is that you have to protect your heart. You have to learn how to protect your heart, and you have to learn how to protect your energy when there's a situation that you have to manage. So if they go ahead, Sabrina.
No, I just say bye-bye. Bye-bye. I try to apologize, okay?
I've seen it where I've been very authentic, and I thought I was being the bigger person. I'm coming, I apologize, and then you get on the phone, and it gets way bigger. They bring up stuff from 1962, and you're like, "Are you kidding me?" Now I'm really mad at you. I mean, it's like, whoo! And so again, it's like, I look. You better be happy I called you. I mean, it took a whole lot for me to call you. Now you want to go there? So I think one of the things that I am not good at, but I'm learning, is how to just be quiet. Sometimes you gotta let people just hang themselves.
That's hard.
It's like,
that's hard.
Okay,
that's
just
hard.
Don't respond, because it's hard. You gotta sit on your hands. Really, you be like, it's easy, and it's easier. I don't know. It's because if you're on the phone and you're silent, sometimes you're silent because you're listening. Sometimes I think you're silent. Why are you being so quiet? I mean, it just If people are mad, sometimes nothing you do. Sometimes it's only time that heals it, because some people just decide they don't like you no more, and so everything you say makes them mad.
I have a question. How many times should you apologize? So whatever the situation is, say you apologize, and you can tell that person wasn't ready for it. And I know, biblically, and once you really, you have literally took the ball and put it in their court, and now it's their responsibility to accept it or not. But you really have done your part. But sometimes if it's, somebody that's really close to you, and you really don't want to lose that relationship, and you could tell that the person didn't accept your apology the way you want it, is it easy just to say bye-bye, or do you wait, a few weeks or whatever, send a card, do you do more things than just that initial apology if you really want that relationship to be restored?
You know what? I'm going to say this to you. I have seen people react both ways, and usually the people who care about someone and can't get past their mistakes are the ones who suffer the most. They're the ones that are the loneliest. They're the ones who are the most unhappy. They wish they had the capacity to accept it as a mistake and keep moving on, but they don't. And so they end up talking about it year 1, year 2, year 3. They're talking about it. Then they talk to all their friends about it. Nobody agrees with them. And then they talk to a whole bunch of other people about it. And because they're defensive and they're trying to justify it, they don't want to accept your apology. And they're the ones that seem unhappy. Meanwhile, you apologize and you're on with your life. You're on with your life. Everything's good. It's, you just keep going. It's so funny. Judith John says, I always acknowledge how a person feels and then go from there. So I learned that in a divorce, counseling. She said, when you're in an argument, you should never say what someone did to you. You should always say how they made you feel. You should never use the word should. You should always say, what you did made me feel like this. So can you help me with those feelings? Because I don't know how to deal with that. But we'll talk a little bit more about divorce, since I'm the only one who can talk about it when we come back. Because I got issues, okay? I'm the one who had the issues, okay? So you're listening to 910 AM, the Superstation. Thank you, Judith, for bringing that forward. You guys, call us at 313-778-7600, because we're here at 910 AM, the Superstation. We'll be right back. Well, here we are talking about women. Women up, women up, women up. I sure did learn a lot going through that divorce, y'all. For real. I don't suggest it for nobody, but that counseling session has served me well on many takes. Many times I've repeated it. So that was a real big one. I tell you something else that they told me. They said never have an argument in the privacy of your home. For me, because we didn't know how to argue. So you need to know how, if you can handle argument, if you're not. But if you're with somebody, even with a girlfriend or whatever, if it looks like it's going to go crazy, go to a restaurant, because people are less likely to go nuts at a restaurant. Now, I've seen some people go nuts, but people are less likely to go nuts at a restaurant. Okay, so let's talk about something else. Let's talk about boundaries. How have you guys seen people put up boundaries that have helped you deal with circumstances with people that when there's a situation or a conflict? Because sometimes these people have to stay in your lives forever. They're not going anywhere. And so if they got to be there, but you need to protect your heart. Do you guys have any stories or advice for people when you've had to protect yourself or set up boundaries that make other people feel uncomfortable?
Because boundaries are different than just cutting people off. Because we have a girlfriend who will cut people off, okay? And maybe sometimes you do need to just cut people off. But boundaries.
And sometimes you don't, right? And sometimes you don't. Because sometimes that don't. Cutting, no.
Huh?
Yeah, it could be too harsh. Talk about it.
Huh?
I mean, talk about it, because that's real. It could be too harsh. It could be too much. It's like, really, forever? You ain't never going to talk to the person ever, ever, ever?
Right. That's excessive. I mean, you go on with what you were saying, Caterina, because you're like, sometimes you need to cut people off, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes you don't. I think sometimes that cutting is excessive and you do it out of emotion. And now your pride is so big, you can't pull it back. And so I think it's just important to think before you act, because that harms a lot of relationships unnecessarily. But go ahead, Caterina. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What you were saying.
Yeah, boundaries I think are easy for me. I mean, I guess it's just the easiest way for boundaries is you limit the time. I would limit one-on-one being with that person where it's just me and them. You know, sometimes you can also use your spouse or your best girlfriend to assist you with those boundaries. If you have to be in the same setting, you're going to a whatever, something where they're going to be there. It's just, it's not like you're running from them, but I just am not going to position myself where I'm going to be in an awkward situation. And you can leave the door open for the possibility of the healing of a relationship, but that doesn't mean that you the scripture says, don't put your pearls before swine. That doesn't mean that you trust them, that you put trust, or that you are, going into business with the person that you're going to spend all kind of time. So there's a difference in cutting someone off and not putting all of keeping the person can still take up space in your life, but you don't put so much weight on it, if that makes sense. You're not giving your power away. So, yeah.
That's a very interesting thing to manage. Who's going to say something? That's a very interesting to manage, because the setting of the boundaries versus cutting someone off versus keep going back to them, expecting them to be different when they never are. You just keep going back and you get mad that you went back and you keep going back because you don't know how to set the boundaries. So, who can talk a little bit to that? Because that could be a really strong issue. When you have to deal with family members, like really close family members that you can't cut them off. But I'm going to tell you something I do. And it may not be with family members, but they said this is when you do delegation. This is when there's certain family members who make certain phone calls. One of the ways I'd set my boundaries is I have different family members who are better at taking care of certain conversations. So I don't feel like I have to take care of all the conversations. I'll call one sister and say, well, you call her. And I call another friend and say, well, you call her. Or it's also a way of me letting them know that I care. But I can't be the one that makes the conversation, because we can't seem to communicate to see the same point. But it gives me a boundary of not putting myself in a position where I'm going to get very frustrated. I know another thing that I say all the time is, I say this a lot: treat people exactly the way you want to be treated. So when I'm talking to people, I will say to them, well, how would you want somebody to treat you if it was the opposite? What would you give me an example of how you would say it to them if it was in the reverse situation? And that really opens up a lot of people's eyes, because they start thinking about how would they do it if it was them that's in the confrontation versus they so mad that they don't even know how to come up with the words. They just don't even know how to come up with the words. So
Gloria, another thing that
yeah
recently happened is there's something big taking place in our family. And I was having a conversation with the cousin, and I said, I don't want that person to be there. And I picked up the phone and called the cousin just to make sure that I was right. And I said, so should I invite him? And they hesitated. I was like, yep, you already gave me the answer. You already gave me the answer. You had to think about it, because when it comes to a wedding or certain things, you don't have to invite a person to your special day just because it's the right. It's your day. There's just certain things. Those are certain boundaries. If they icky, right. They got stank attitude. Right. No, they are not coming. I don't care. Nope, not invited.
Yeah, because they're going to talk about you. They're going to talk about you whether they're there or not. So you know what? Talk about me from afar. Don't come to the gathering, okay?
Where I'm paying $100 a plate for you to eat my food, and then they'll talk about me. Okay, no, you ain't invited.
And you know what, you guys, I wanted to add to that is you have to know what your triggers are. You have to know what your hot buttons are. You have to know when you're going to be pushed to a certain place. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she shared, what her triggers are, and why it triggers her, this, that, and the other. And I just think it's important when you know that, because then I can't be in this particular space with this particular person, because I know they're going to push my hot buttons. They're going to push my trigger. And when my trigger is pushed, it's not going to be pretty. So instead of, it being something, blowing up and a big scene taking place, I'm choosing not to either be in that place with that person, or I'm choosing not to allow that person to be in my space. And you know what? I think that's totally okay.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Ken told me, this is a divorce conversation. Ken told me with his ex-wife, he used to make a list of everything that was a trigger. And whenever she said it, because she knew his triggers, so he would not respond. That was like a really big lesson from me, that he wrote down the triggers. And when she said that, I'm not going to say anything. When she said that, I'm not going to say anything. If she said that, I'm not going to say anything. And so he protected his heart. He set up his boundaries, and he put down his triggers. So that's really good. You guys, OMG, we're talking about divorce. We got issues, and none of them been divorced but me. That's 11. But we're talking about women up, and we're so excited you joined us today. We're going to be here tomorrow. We got issues. Call a girlfriend. Tell her to join our conversation, because we cannot wait to converse with you. We're at 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, and we're talking about friendship. We're talking about all degrees of it, laughing, the hard stuff, the easy stuff, the stuff that needs to be addressed right away. So we'll see you tomorrow from 6 to 7 p.m. Talk to you soon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.